A young woman, frail and exhausted, walked into a hospital cafeteria, her stomach growling. She hesitated before asking a wealthy businessman for his leftovers. He smirked, dismissing her, until the next day, when a judge called her name in court. What happened next? This is a story about humility, hidden strength, and the moment life changes forever. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. Stories like this remind us that miracles happen when we least expect them. The leftovers. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cafeteria buzz overhead, casting a sterile glow over the tired faces of doctors, nurses, and visitors. The air smelled of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables, a familiar scent to Emily Carter, who had spent too many nights in this place. Her stomach growled loudly, a sharp reminder that she hadn't eaten since yesterday's half sandwich, scavenged from a patient's abandoned tray. She tightened her grip on the strap of her worn-out backpack, her fingers brushing against the last few coins inside, just enough for bus fare home, if she skipped dinner. Again, her mother was upstairs, asleep in room 412, hooked to machines that beeped in a steady, mocking rhythm. Leukemia didn't care that Emily worked 2 jobs. It didn't care that rent was due. It just took. Emily's eyes scanned the crowded cafeteria, landing on a man in a tailored suit sitting alone, his plate still half full. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, real food, not the soggy pizza or limp salads left in the staff break room. He was typing on his phone, his expression bored, like he had better places to be. She hesitated, swallowed. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. With slow steps, she approached his table. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice was softer than she meant it to be. The man, Daniel Whitmore, though she didn't know his name yet, looked up, his sharp blue eyes flicking over her faded sweater, her scuffed sneakers. His nose wrinkled slightly, as if he could smell the exhaustion on her. Emily forced herself not to shrink back. "If you're not going to finish that, could I have it?" A beat of silence. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile, a smirk. "Get a job," he said, voice smooth and dismissive, like he was commenting on the weather. Heat rushed to Emily's cheeks. She opened her mouth to say what she didn't know, but before she could speak, a voice cut through the cafeteria noise. "Emily? Emily Carter?" A nurse stood in the doorway, her expression tight. "Your mother's oxygen levels dropped. The doctor wants to talk to you." Everything else vanished. The hunger, the humiliation, the man's cold stare. None of it mattered. Emily turned and ran, her heart pounding in her throat. Behind her, Daniel shook his head and pushed the plate away, untouched. That night, Emily slumped in the stiff chair beside her mother's bed, her body aching with fatigue. The doctors had stabilized her mom, but the word palliative kept floating around, heavy and suffocating. She closed her eyes. Just for a second, a hand touched her shoulder. She jerked awake, blinking up at a police officer. His face was unreadable. "Miss Carter," he said, "you need to come with us." Her stomach dropped. "Why? What's wrong?" But he didn't answer. Just stepped back, waiting. Emily glanced at her mother, still asleep, still breathing. Then she stood, her legs unsteady. Something was coming, and nothing would be the same. The unexpected summons. The police cruiser pulled up to the courthouse just as the first light of dawn streaked across the Chicago skyline. Emily sat in the back seat, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. The officers hadn't told her anything, just that she was required to appear before a judge immediately. Her mind raced with possibilities. Had she missed a bill? Was it something to do with her mother's medical expenses? The heavy doors of the courthouse swung open, and Emily was led down a long hallway, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The air smelled of old wood and stale coffee. When they entered the courtroom, her breath caught. It was packed. Dozens of well-dressed strangers sat in the pews, their murmurs fading as she walked in. At the front, behind a massive oak desk, sat Judge Harris, an older woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled into a tight bun. And to the left, Emily froze. It was him, the man from the hospital cafeteria, the one who'd smirked when she asked for his leftovers. Now he was wearing an even more expensive suit, his posture rigid, his jaw clenched. When their eyes met, his narrowed in recognition and then disbelief. The judge cleared her throat. Court is now in session for the reading of the late Margaret Whitmore's last will and testament. Emily's stomach dropped. Whitmore, that was the name on the hospital donor wing. One of the wealthiest families in Chicago. The lawyer, a thin man with round glasses, stood and began reading in a monotone voice. I, Margaret Elizabeth Whitmore, being of sound mind. Emily barely heard the legal jargon. Her pulse pounded in her ears. None of this made sense. Then the lawyer said, To my beloved niece, Emily Carter, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the property, stocks, and charitable trusts, to be managed at her discretion. The courtroom erupted. Daniel, because that was his name, she realized now, shot to his feet. This is a mistake, he snarled. Who the hell is she? The judge slammed her gavel. Mr. Whitmore, control yourself. Emily's legs trembled. She gripped the back of the pew in front of her to steady herself. I don't understand, she whispered. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Ms. Carter, your mother was Margaret Whitmore's younger sister. They were estranged for many years, but Margaret never stopped searching for her. A memory flickered. Her mother, years ago, crying over an old photograph. She was my big sister. She promised she'd come back for me. Emily's throat tightened. Daniel's lawyer stood, his voice slick. Your Honor will be contesting this. There's no proof of relation beyond these documents, which could easily be forged. Judge Harris gave him a withering look. The will has already been authenticated. Unless you have evidence of fraud, this matter is settled. Daniel's face darkened. He leaned over to his lawyer, whispering something frantic. Emily's head spun. Niece, estate, money. The kind of money that could save her mother. The kind that could change everything. But as she stepped out of the courthouse later, the late morning sun blinding after the dim courtroom, a black town car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, revealing Daniel's icy stare. You think you've won? He said, his voice low. This isn't over. Then the car sped off, leaving Emily standing on the steps, the weight of a fortune and a fight settling onto her shoulders. The fight for what's right. The Whitmore mansion loomed before Emily like something out of a Gothic novel. Towering stone walls, ivy creeping up the sides, a heavy oak door that seemed to whisper secrets. The lawyer had given her the keys that morning, along with a thick folder of documents and a warning. Daniel Whitmore isn't going to let this go without a fight. She turned the key in the lock, the click echoing through the grand foyer. The air inside was still, thick with the scent of old books and polished wood. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her as she stepped further inside. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor. This is mine now. The thought was dizzying. A stack of unopened mail sat on a silver tray near the staircase. She sifted through it, bills, charity invitations, a letter from a law firm with urgent stamped in red. She tore it open, her stomach tightening as she read. Notice of contest, Daniel Whitmore versus Emily Carter Ree. Estate of Margaret Whitmore. Of course, he wasn't wasting time. She dropped the letter and climbed the stairs, her fingers trailing along the banister. At the top, a hallway stretched in both directions, doors leading to rooms she hadn't even seen yet. But one stood slightly ajar, light spilling out from within. She pushed it open. An office. No, a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive mahogany desk, and above it, a framed photograph of a woman who could only be Margaret. She had the same sharp cheekbones as Emily's mother, the same warm eyes. Emily's breath caught. She moved closer, her fingers brushing the frame. Then she noticed a drawer beneath the desk, slightly open. Inside, a leather-bound journal. She hesitated. This felt like intruding. But if Margaret had left her everything, didn't that include her secrets? She opened the journal. The first page was dated decades ago. Dearest Clara, it began her mother's name. I know you won't read this, but I have to write it anyway. I should never let them send you away. Emily's hands trembled. She flipped further, pages filled with regrets, please, and then later, determination. I've hired investigators. I will find you. A tear slipped down her cheek. A noise downstairs made her freeze. Footsteps. She snapped the journal shut, her pulse racing. Had Daniel come back? The lawyer had said the house was legally hers, but that didn't mean he wouldn't try something. She crept to the door, listening. Hello? A voice called. Female, unfamiliar. Emily exhaled. Not Daniel. She stepped into the hallway to find an older woman in a crisp suit standing at the top of the stairs. Miss Carter? I'm Eleanor Price. I was Margaret's personal attorney. Emily relaxed slightly. You knew her? Eleanor smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. For 30 years. And I know what Daniel is capable of. He's already frozen the charitable accounts. Emily's stomach dropped. Can he do that? Not legally, but he's betting you won't fight him. Eleanor held out a business card. I'd like to represent you. Pro bono. Emily took the card, studying the embossed lettering. Why? Because Margaret was my friend, Eleanor said simply, and she wanted you to have this. Not him. A noise outside, a car door slamming. Eleanor's expression hardened. That'll be his lawyer. They've scheduled a deposition for tomorrow. Emily's grip tightened on the journal. What do I do? Eleanor met her gaze. You prove you're Margaret's heir. And you show this court exactly the kind of man Daniel Whitmore really is. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Emily took a deep breath. Time to fight. The judgment. The courtroom felt different this time. Emily sat at the plaintiff's table, her back straight, Eleanor by her side. The air was thick with tension, every whisper from the gallery making her nerves tighten. Across the aisle, Daniel glared at her, his expensive lawyer murmuring in his ear. Judge Harris entered, and the room fell silent. This court is now in session, she announced. Mr. Whitmore, you've contested the validity of Margaret Whitmore's will. Present your case. Daniel's lawyer stood, smoothing his tie. Your Honor, we believe Miss Carter manipulated a vulnerable woman into changing her will. We have witnesses who will testify Margaret was confused in her final days. Emily's hands clenched under the table. Lies. Eleanor stood. Objection. Margaret Whitmore's mental competency was confirmed by her physicians. This is a baseless accusation. The judge nodded. Sustained. Mr. Langley, do you have actual evidence? The lawyer hesitated. Then, smirking, he said, We do. A recording of Miss Carter admitting she'd do anything for money. Emily's breath caught. What? The lawyer played the audio. A distorted clip of her voice, spliced and edited. I need that money. I'd do whatever it takes. It was from the hospital cafeteria, when she'd been talking to a nurse about her mother's medical bills. Daniel's smirk widened. Eleanor stood again. Your Honor, this is clearly manipulated. We request a voice analysis. Before the judge could respond, Emily stood. I have something to say. The room went still. Judge Harris studied her. Go ahead, Miss Carter. Emily pulled out Margaret's journal. This belonged to my aunt. It proved she spent years looking for my mother, her sister. She wanted us to have this. Not because of money, but because family mattered to her. She turned to Daniel. Unlike some people. Daniel's face darkened. This is irrelevant. Eleanor stepped forward. Not quite, because we have our evidence. She handed the judge a USB drive. Security footage from the hospital cafeteria, proving Miss Carter never spoke to Margaret. And this, she held up another file, proved Daniel Whitmore drained $2 million from the estate before Margaret's death. Gasps filled the room. Daniel shot up. That's a lie. The judge's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. She examined the evidence, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at Daniel. You've committed fraud, Mr. Whitmore. His lawyer paled. Judge Harris turned to Emily. The will stands. The estate is yours. And as for Mr. Whitmore, she fixed him with a cold stare. You'll repay what you stole or face charges. Daniel's face twisted in rage. You will regret this, he hissed at Emily. But for the first time, Emily didn't flinch. No, she said softly. I won't. Epilogue. 6 months later. The Whitmore mansion was alive with laughter. Emily's mother, now in remission, sat in the garden, surrounded by flowers. The estate had become a foundation for families battling medical debt, just as Margaret had wanted. And Daniel? He'd repaid the money. But he'd also shown up one day, hat in hand, asking for a job. Emily had given him one in the kitchen, where the leftovers were plenty. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because sometimes the greatest victories start with the smallest act of courage.